Mom said something, and that's the way that it was going to be.
It's easy to be there and not be there at all.
There's nothing easy. There's nothing easy about having kids.
Time doesn't fly when you're present. When you are there and paying attention and involved, time actually slows down.
It was one of those moments as a dad where you go, okay, she's going to be good.
I am Tony Cooper, host of the Dad Manual podcast, and I am here with one of my favorite dads. Evan, will you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Evan Miller. I'm a great dad, and I've got some wisdom to share.
Yeah, you do.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Yes, I'm very excited about this. You and I have
Likewise.
had many chats about fathering, so like being able to record it here is I'm pretty stoked about. All right, let's start with tell me about your kids.
I've got two. I have a stepson, and I say stepson in like the lightest meaning of that. So I came into his life when he was about 12 months old when I met my wife. A son from a previous relationship, not married, great outside dad. So really good experience there. So I have my stepson, Kaden. Phenomenal. He's 20 and a half. I don't think you do halves that age, but he's 20 and a half. He's in college, smart kid, tall, good looking, like reliving some of the blunders that I lived as well. So great to see like I'm hitting the next generation there. Then I've got a daughter who is 16 and she's with my wife and I. Or from my wife and I, and phenomenal kid. It's really funny. She's my wife calls her my mini me. So she's hilarious. But yeah, 16 and a fantastic kid. Just good human beings, both of them. Like generous, warm, great communicators. Like I have a good compliment you get when your kids are in a room of adults and other adults are like, wow, they can hold a conversation. I'm like, yeah, I hope so. Like that's
Yeah. I mean, and I don't know Kaden, I haven't met him, but you know, I met Jay one time and I was blown away at just her presence and her just sense of self and confidence and like, yeah, like really relatable. And so, you know, definitely part of who they are is who they are, and part of who they are is how they were raised. Because one of the things I've been curious about is what people's perspectives are on the nature versus nurture argument. Like how much of it is who they are, and how much of it is it like raised, and what's your thoughts about that?
I fully believe nature plays a massive role because it's very funny. So Kaden and Jay, both we've raised our kids the exact same. Right now, when you have a step child, there's another set of parents involved. But I will say, Kaden in his soul is who Kaden is. Jay in her soul is who Jay is. And they came from the same environment, same parenting, coaching experiences, like all of that, but they are two definitely individual people. So, which, you know, you look at my twin sister and I, and same exact parenting environment, totally different individuals, like ideologically very different individuals. So, you know, I think nature owns that one, man. I think there's some nurture you can put in there, but I think nature's going to have major overlays to that.
Yeah. And then in your childhood, like tell me about, you know, your family situation and you and your sister and all of that as a background to just, you know, because all of that makes an impression, and all of that we carries with us when we step into the fathering journey. And so, you know, your background around that I think is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had what seemed to be a totally normal childhood. To me, when you get a little bit older, you hear that there's just a billion different ways it could be. So I have a twin sister, grew up together in Placerville, and the way it worked, so my mom had a house, and it was about a quarter mile from my grandparents' house. My mom's a single mom. Had never really met my dad. He lived in Los Angeles, is all we knew, or in Southern California. And it was great, man. So my mom, phenomenal lady, absolute provider, always had a house, always fed anything that we wanted to do as far as for sports, always available for us. So that was fantastic. But when mom was at work, we would just go to my grandparents' house. And so it was great. So I don't know if I thought it was great at the time, but I had my mom as a parent, but I also had both my grandparents, and we had them, 40% of the time, 50% of the time. And, I look back now and they're absolutely formative, because I not only got, taught by my mother, who was a fantastic human being, but by my grandma and grandpa as well. So I kind of see them all as parent figures for sure, more than just grandparents.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. Should I tell the story about like
Yeah.
where?
Yeah.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. So this is a great story. So I have my dad in parentheses. So my mom was married to a gentleman who was a professional baseball player.
Let's just all never hope nobody ever refers to us as dad in parentheses.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in this case, it's definitely parentheses.
Yeah.
So we always had this like fictional dad that was never around, right? But I had my grandpa, so it didn't really affect me that much. Well, when I turned 40, I got a phone call one day, and my mom was really trying to get a hold of me. I couldn't figure out what she wanted to get a hold of me for. She's like, I got to meet you today. I said, okay. I'd call my wife. Hey, my mom wants to meet me. I'm afraid grandma has cancer. Somebody's dying. My mom's getting divorced. I was like, something's got to be bad. Like, this just doesn't happen. And we end up meeting. And my mom sits down, and I'm 40 years old at the time. And my mom says, I've been lying to you for the last 41 years. And I thought, that's pretty funny, because I'm 40. So I'm not really sure where that math works out. And then she goes right into, well, I got to tell you, your dad's not your dad. And I'm like, well, my dad was never in my life anyway. So my grandpa was my dad. So I'm not sure where we're going with this. She goes, well, your sister did 23andMe the other day. And, or I think it was like 6 months before. And it came back with some interesting findings. And I was like, oh, yeah, I mean, imagine we're sitting at a coffee shop in the middle of a Wednesday, and I left work for this conversation. She says, we were having a hard time conceiving. So we were doing in vitro therapy, and we tried, and it was so hard. And it was early times. It was in the mid to late 70s, and kept going to another clinic and another clinic. And finally it took, and I got pregnant with you and your sister. We had gone to this clinic. They said your sperm donor was a doctor and tall and good looking and all these things. And we were like, oh, okay, great. This is going to work out well. Well, when my dad finally had my sister and I show up, he was out. He was like, I just don't feel a connection to these kids. I want to get a divorce. So he divorced my mom. Pretty shitty move. But he was a baseball player. He had other priorities. He also had 2 other kids with another gal already. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to go raise my own kids. So my mom raised us. Well, when my sister pulled the 23andMe, it came up that she had 7 brothers and sisters throughout the United States. So my sister, being who she is, and she's big into genealogies and a lot of that stuff, she starts getting a hold of these people.
Oh, wow.
And in my head, I'm going, as my mom's telling me this, I'm like, well, dad was a baseball player. He might have just hooked up around. Like, I'm kind of thinking she might be going that way. Nope. She calls all these people. All of their parents are gay.
No
they're all
way.
like
Okay.
same-sex couples with kids that have our genes connected to them.
Oh,
So my
wow.
sister's like, okay, this isn't dad just hooking up with people while he's on the road. This is something real that's going on here. So she ends up finding out all of them are sperm donors. So she goes to my mom, and my mom is a private lady. My mom's like, okay, yes, that's what happened. So my sister says, you tell Evan within 24 hours, or I'm going to tell him, and I'm telling everybody else in the family.
So your mom had told you your whole life that this guy who she was married to at the time, who was a baseball player, was your dad, and you never really knew him, but you were always under the impression that was your father.
Yeah. This fictional guy who
Yeah.
lived in Los Angeles.
And never met him, never had any interactions with him.
So I did have some interactions. So come to find out, as we got a little bit older, so we lived in Placerville, out Highway 49. we come to find out he lives in between where we live and town, which is like 2 miles. So our fictional Los Angeles dad actually lived between where we lived and where we had to drive to town.
Okay.
So it was interesting. At some point, my mom tried to get us together and like see if we could have a relationship. And all I really remember about it was he loved WWF wrestling. So we would go to his house. We would go to his house. He would drink beer and sit us down in front of WWF, and he was super stoked about it. My sister and I were like, "Yeah, I don't know if we need to come over here. I feel like we could do something better with our time than that." That was the first set of time that I came into contact with him. The second set, and we had a different last name than my dad did. Well, the second time I came into contact with him, I was not a great teenager. I had gotten a DUI when I was 16.
Okay.
Got my license, almost immediately got a DUI. Had to go to the probation department where he was my probation officer at the probation department. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. So I walked in and I was a pretty rough teenager, and I was just like, you know what? Let's just make a deal. I won't get in trouble again. You won't call me. And he was like, yeah, sounds good. So
Wow.
those are the two contact points I had with my mom's previous husband.
So a couple of things. So you became a stepdad before you became a biological father.
Yep.
And I'm curious about your journey to fatherhood. Like you and Audra getting together and you meeting Kaden as a 1-year-old. And where did your ideas about being a dad come from? Like thinking about your upbringing and your different influences.
Yeah, from my grandfather, for sure.
Yeah, what was he like?
My grandpa was always known as the guy who never cussed, which is really interesting because I have a terrible mouth. He ran the bar at the American Legion. He was a big person in the Jeepers Jamboree, which is a massive like 4-wheel drive club. He knew everybody, and it wasn't like fun times knew everybody. Everybody knew him and respected him, and you could see it. Like he was Ray Miller, like. It meant something. And when I was a kid, like it's actually kind of emotional to talk about it. Those are big shoes to step into. And he was a cool guy. Like he had a workshop. My grandma would need something. He would disappear for a while and he would come back with the solution to it. And I was like, that's a man, look at just doing man stuff.
Right.
So like the car broke down, he'd fix the car. He lived on a working farm. So he had a cattle ranch. So most of our time was spent on the cattle ranch. So, you have work to do. Right. But it was just a really cool experience. And every day we ate lunch together. Like my grandma would literally go out and ring the bell. We'd come in from the ranch, we'd all sit and eat lunch together and we'd talk about what was going on. You'd go back and either we'd go out and play in the farm or, grandpa would go back to work and then she'd go out and ring the bell and you knew you're coming back for dinner. And he was at every meal. He was just a great human being. And actually his relationship with my grandmother formulated how I understood like a marriage relationship to be. And they were great. They'd mess with each other. They were funny. They loved each other. They were like an older school couple. So it's not like a big affectionate, not a ton of affection, but you knew that they just loved each other deeply. And I was just thinking about this the other day. I was in the house when my grandma got the call that was telling my grandma that grandpa had cancer. My grandpa smoked. He didn't have a lot of vices, but he always had a Hamm's beer in the afternoon.
Hams.
I got to drink Hamm's. I still remember the taste of it till today. And I would always go out and play with the crushed cans. And I didn't realize there were cigarette butts in it, but I would shake them around and there was something clinking around in there. Well, now that I'm older, I know he was smoking. And we never knew he smoked. As kids, we had no idea. I remember being in the house when my grandmother got the call. And I say this to like, the torment that was in her voice like shakes me to today when she heard that, because that was her person. And it's like, it was such an intense relationship and they'd been married for, 50, 60 years, something like that. And it was just a really cool experience. And now, having my mom at the same time, provider, stuff broke around the house, she'd figure it out. Like she was just a great single parent. She was phenomenal. So it was cool that I got to see both the single parent life, which is the best part about that was you always knew where you stood because there was one parent. So mom said something, and that's the way that it was going to be. You
And you
couldn't
couldn't like
convince
run
a
off
secondary.
and like try to convince dad of something separate. Yeah.
No, there was no good cop, bad cop. If she wanted to be a bad cop, it was just straight bad cop right from the beginning. So you just knew that's what it was. And yeah, so I got kind of both sides of it, but that's where I would say from a parenting standpoint that's where that influence came from for sure.
One of the things that I see a lot is based on your parental influence. You either like want to be like them or want to be not like them. So, I like to say like, you either deify them, like treat them like gods, or demonize them, like treat them like the devil. And then that impacts how you want to show up as a father. And so sounds very much like super positive influence, a lot of respect for your grandfather and your mom, because mom paid
Yeah, my grandmother.
both
Yeah.
roles, right? And your grandma. So what were some of those attributes that you brought with you that you witnessed that you wanted to show up as a dad?
The word stalwart comes to mind. I don't know if that's the right use of it, but like unwavering support no matter what. And like I said, I was challenging as a teenager, ultra challenging.
Yeah.
Like rebellious, I don't even know if is close to what I had gone like participated in, but there was never a second where I didn't know that I was loved and supported by everybody. If I look back to high school, nobody thought I was going to college at all. In fact, I took a test that was like a placement test for where you were going to be in the workforce. It said amusement park worker.
No.
I swear
what
to you,
does
can't
that
even
tell
make
me
this
about?
up.
Like, what does that mean? Why? What were you like in high school?
I
A
have
clown, a
dyslexia.
juggler.
Yeah. I juggled a lot. Yeah. No, I had dyslexia, so I was a terrible test taker, and I couldn't read until I was in the 5th grade. Nobody really knew that because I could fake it really, really well. I would repetitiously learn words, and I would memorize books based on like hearing them audibly. So people thought I could read, and then they finally figured out when books got too challenging for me to just fake it. That they had to retro back my education. I still remember I was at the school, and it was like all of like the normal kids would go in the Robins group, and I was in the Blue Jays group, which was like it was a rough group. It was all of like the mentally impaired kids and me. And I was like 5 years older than everybody learning how to read again, but they didn't know how to teach me how to read. So my mom, and you got to remember, this is in 1986, 1987. My mom went out and found a group, like a groundbreaking group that was teaching people how to learn with dyslexia, found them and would drive me there every single day to learn how to learn and learn how to read.
Wow.
And like that's where like that terminology to me comes in. It was like it was like whatever you need, we're gonna figure it out. And my mom, my grandma, my grandpa, every single one of them was exactly like that.
Interesting. So that, I'm obviously, you know me as an executive coach, and I've coached lots of different business leaders. And what I've found over the years is so many founders, business owners have a history of either dyslexia or ADD or both. And it's really interesting to hear that and start to realize like it makes it really challenging to learn in a traditional educational environment because there's a way that people are supposed to learn at school, and if you can't learn that way because you learn differently, they have labels for you that are not flattering.
No,
And
I was a dumb kid.
yeah, which sucks because all it means is you can learn, you just learn in a different way, but school's just really intended for one delivery method. But there's something that happens to a kid. Now they struggle a lot in that time period, but they come out with something different that has them be much more entrepreneurial, much more self-sufficient, much more willing to take things on. It's just there's just too high of a correlation that I've experienced, and so that's a really interesting I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, it's I just call it my superpower, right? Because I just learn differently than other people do. And it's not at a different clip. I learn at the same pace. I just do things differently than other people would
Right.
have.
Yeah.
But yeah, that going back to that question, like that level of unwavering support and like knowing that pillar was always going to be there. Like the house was built on rock,
Mm.
and that house was always going to be there. And it, you know, I look back at my mom. My mom made statements all the time like, "Oh, well, when you go to college." And it wasn't like forcing, you're going to go to college, you're going to go to college, you're going to go. It was just, I always knew, oh, well, when I go to college,
Right.
XYZ, right?
Right. Right.
And I ended up finding my footing in college and absolutely crushed it. I loved it. Like different learning environment
Yeah.
and I got to be, wasn't the dumb kid anymore in class that you know grew up in a small town. I moved away immediately, and I was like, wow, this is fantastic. It just, and it was that unwavering thought in her mind, like, no, that's just what you do.
Yeah. I
That was
love
it.
that.
It was phenomenal. Yeah.
Such a great, I mean, takeaway parenting. Just fuck. I mean, if your kids know that they're loved and supported and they can just be free to be who they are, that's incredible. So, all right, now fast forward, you become a parent. And for, like you
Yeah.
said, first you're the woman you're dating already has a child, and so you're instantly thrown into it. What was that like for you? What did that mean to you? And then I'll follow up. I'd love to hear about like then when Jay's born, it's a different situation. What was that like for you?
Yeah. You know, having a stepchild is a kudos to any step parent out there. It's not an easy gig. You got a whole different set of variables to deal with. So,
Mhm. Like
um,
what? Like what? Like
first set of variables, other parents that aren't in the house with you.
like committee parenting?
I mean, a committee would be fantastic, but a committee is generally when you're all sitting at one table.
Yeah.
This was parenting where two parents are doing one thing and one parent is doing something and you have no idea what it is. Like, for an example, is when Kaden got to a certain age, he started to call me dad. I was like, this is fantastic. Like, I love this. That was very short lived because he got reprimanded for calling me
Oh.
dad.
Oh
You
wow.
have one, his dad would say, you have one dad and it's me. You do not call him that. And that, it created a really challenging dynamic for Kaden
Mm.
because he had feelings that he wanted to express to share that label with somebody. And he got heavily reprimanded for it. And it really created a chasm between Kaden and I. When he would get older and he started to feel those emotions, he would block them and he would Heisman me in intense situations because he had a dad and I was the stepdad.
Right.
So that's where that becomes really, really challenging. So, you
Mm.
know, that's one of the variables. I mean, many, many of the variables. Those are the two biggest ones, though. It's the disconnect between the other families, if there are. And I will say, Caden's dad's a great guy. Like he
Yeah.
did good by Caden. Like they've got a great relationship. We have a good relationship. Um, there were times where it was challenging for sure.
Sure.
I will say though, coming into meeting my wife, I knew almost instantly I wanted to marry my wife. She's stunning. She's funny. She's so sassy.
Good Midwestern upbringing.
Oh yeah, yeah. She shook that Midwestern upbringing off pretty quick. It's funny. Yeah, born in Alaska, the least outdoorsy person I've ever met in my life. If she was born in a mall, I would totally believe it. Yeah. So when I met her, but I knew I couldn't mess around. If you remember I can't remember what movie it is. Oh, it's Jerry Maguire. Jerry is gonna hook up with the gal who's gone with him, and Cuba Gooding Jr. says something like you can't shoplift the pootie tang or something like that, and it was some reference about like, hey, if she's got a kid, you can't mess around.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of I knew that right away, right? I knew having a kid was a huge responsibility. And if I was going to be in her life, I couldn't just be in it for fun times. Like I had to be into it, which played really well for what I was looking for. I was just the right age at the right time. And she was perfect for, I mean, I couldn't find a better match, even if I had continued to look. So I was like, this actually works out great. Like, I'm stoked you have a kid. And
Yeah.
I was not ready at all for any of that, and I made some major errors, like in this conversation is to express some of those errors and how to deal with those. I think one of the biggest challenges that I had, I grew up on a farm. If I messed up, you got smacks, right? Like, and actually usually from grandma.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way. Like, I knew where I stood. There were boundaries, and if you broke those boundaries, there were going to be penalties for it. And I was not in the initial phase. I did not know how to handle that at all. I didn't know how to positively set boundaries or express that there were challenges or whatever it might be. That was, I think, the biggest challenge that I had getting into it, because I was also a third party participant. I wasn't married. So I think I just took it out in frustration. Sadly enough, it's like probably one of the more embarrassing parts of it, and not frustration on Kaden, but frustration probably just in our relationship.
Mm.
And we figured it out, right? There was a path to it, but it didn't happen overnight. It took some time to get to.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be really tough to know what, one, you've never been a father before, so you're figuring that out, period. And you're the, like, kind of the proxy dad on the outside of it, and what rights do I have, or what role am I playing? That all
Yeah.
had to be pretty confusing.
Yeah, it really was. And I think your second part of the question was like, how was it different when you had JL? And I didn't feel that same level of pressure, because if there was something that I wanted to express, I could freely express it. And that was, I think, the easiest part, or an easier, there's nothing easy. There's nothing easy about having kids, but an easier part of JL is I didn't have to take into consideration a third party. Like, if Audra and I were on the same page parenting wise, we could execute it rather than having to take into consideration a third party. And that's, when we figured out how to work around some of those initial frustrations, it became a whole lot easier. But with Jay, it was easier from the start with that, because it's two people that you can communicate to right away.
Right. What did becoming a dad mean to you? Like, what was, how did you hold it? What was the significance? How did you see yourself stepping into that?
It's kind of like when you're growing up, and it's always the theory of, well, you're going to go to college. Well, you're going to get married, you're going to have kids. I don't really know that at the time. At the time, I don't think it meant as much to me as it does now. I wanted to be the dad that people looked up to. I wanted to be the coach. I wanted to be I wanted to be somebody who my kids could admire, from a level like I admired my grandpa from. And I will say, in the first couple years, I quit drinking a couple years ago. I didn't have a drinking problem. I didn't, but at the same time, when I would drink, I would become disconnected. And what I started to realize the older that I got is I wasted a lot of time when I was younger with our marriage and when the kids were younger. Because I would come home and be like, man, I'm tired. I'm beat up from the day. I'm going to have a drink and relax. And that's just disconnecting. And I actually, like, if I look back to a younger dad, I would actually give him the guidance, like, those kids are only young for a certain period of time. And those days may feel long, but man, the years are short. And I'm looking at my kids moving out of the house and going to college and doing these other things. And I wish I had some of that time back. Now, was I a proficient dad? And yeah, did I participate in these other things? I did, but I definitely could have done more.
What are some of the missed moments that you think that you wish you could have back?
I don't even know if it's missed moments, because I was at everything, right? I was at everything. I was there. I never didn't show up, but it was just not being present,
Yeah.
as present as you can be.
Yeah.
And now that I've not drank for a couple years, you're so present when there's not like drugs or alcohol that are involved in it, that it just opens your eyes and you're like, oh, wow, I wonder what I did miss. Yeah, I was there all the time, but I wonder,
Right.
gosh, what could I maybe have perceived or participated in, or just been more of a participant rather than a spectator. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the best way to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's easy to be there and not be there at all. Like, that's actually
Yeah.
incredibly easy.
And you get the hall pass because they're like, what a good dad. He's here. And just being there is not the key. That's not a dub.
Yeah. And Jay, how old's Jay? 16?
Jay's 16. Yeah.
16. It's especially when they get to be the end of high school. Like, you get a lot of other parents who hear them say a lot, like, time flies. Oh my gosh. Like, they were just a kid yesterday and now they're leaving home and time flies. And what you just said is really powerful. The idea of presence, because I found that time doesn't fly when you're present. When you are there and paying attention and involved, time actually slows down. It really does. Like, when Olivia graduated high school, they're like, "Oh my god, like, can you believe she's graduating high school?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's been 18 years. It's a long time. 18 years is a very long time." Like, that's a very long time for people to go like, "Oh, it just flew by." I'm like, "What? How come you weren't there for it?" Like, that's I think the part that you're saying that is such a big deal is like the quality of your involvement, your presence makes such a difference.
Man, it really does. And don't get me wrong, like I coached the teams and I participated in the groups and we went on trips and we did these other things, but it's just now seeing how rich the time can be. That's where this is a cool opportunity for other people to hear this, because it does go quick. And whether you're just there showing up or whether you're actually really deeply present in the process are two totally like drastically different situations.
I love what you said before about you really thinking about the kind of dad you wanted to be and the impact you wanted to have. What are some of the, would you say, like, core principles or values or ideas that you look to instill in your kids?
Yeah, so this is one of the most important ones, and it absolutely came from my mom. My mom never treated us like kids. My mom treated us like human beings that were going to get exposed to everything. And if you weren't prepared for it, then she didn't do her job. And I still remember to this day so many times, and I hear the same thing about our kids too. Gosh, your kids are like little adults. They can roll in and have these conversations like current affairs, like adult situations. And that was the most important thing. And that was big for my mom. Was my mom, she didn't do the baby talk. She didn't do the, hey, I'm going to hide the world from you. She just put world front and center and said, you're a part of this and you better figure out how to function inside of it. And that was powerful for me, especially. And I would imagine for my sister as well. We grew up, and it doesn't mean I didn't have a great childhood. I had an amazing childhood, but I got exposed to adult things pretty early. So like I could sit, I still remember today, I could sit at the table with my uncle, great guy, Uncle Pete. He was a drama teacher at the high school. And I knew that he was a drama teacher. So if I wanted to communicate with him on a high level, I would watch movies and then like put down my thoughts about the movie. And then I would say, oh, have you seen this movie? Oh, I have seen that movie. And I would bring up topics through the movie of how to, and he was like, who does this? What are you doing? And I was like, well, this is how you communicate with adults. And, you know what? It helped a lot because I just there was not anything that was out of bounds. If I had a question about something, it's funny the things that you think of when you're thinking about this. I got a CD. It was Digital Planets or Digital Planets or something like that. But they talked about orgies in that song.
Okay.
In fact, I think the song was about orgies. And I was in the car and I was like, Mom, what's an orgy? And she was like, okay, well, I guess we're going to do this. I think I was like 11.
I was going to say, yeah. How did that show up with your kids? Like, what do you think you exposed them to that other parents wouldn't have exposed their kids to, or how did you treat them differently?
Yeah, well, so a big theory at our house is much like how I grew up. Like when we have dinner, everybody sits down at the dinner table. And man, that dinner table has had some conversations in it. This is funny. I was just thinking about this story earlier today in preparation for this, thinking, gosh, what have we done differently? So we were out snowboarding one day, and a friend of mine likes to smoke marijuana and had left all of his paraphernalia, like a bag of gear, in the truck with us. Well, none of us partake in that. So I was like, well, you know what? I've got all this stuff here. My kids, I think at the time were maybe 12 and 10. So I brought the bag in to dinner. We ate dinner and I put the bag on the table and I emptied it out. And the kids were like, what is this? And I was like, this is marijuana. Like, you guys are getting to the age where you're going to get exposed to this. And I want to make sure you guys can see and understand that this is a drug. It's going to do some certain things to you, but this is not something that you just play with, right? If you smell or you see something that's like this, like, these are drugs. And that was a pretty cool experience, just because there's no boundaries to it, right? Other times where, especially in our day and age, we have transgender and bisexual and all these other things. I think it's really good to have an open conversation about that in a world that a lot of times wants to either hide that or pretend that it doesn't exist or whatever it might be. And I just think that's a disservice to young people. We talk about nature versus nurture. They're going to make their own decisions in life. And I'm not going to sway them one way or the other. I'm going to educate them and help them be comfortable with, there are different people in the world that are going to look different than you and act different than you. And it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just they're on a different path. And maybe that is your path. Maybe it's not, but doesn't make it any different for who you are to me. You're my kid. I love you. And that's, those are the type of adult conversations. And I mean, even just current affairs, like wars are happening or whatever it could be. I mean, it's
right.
there just shouldn't be any
kids as people who need to be shielded. Like, they can handle it.
We're always
raising
trying to
them,
protect.
there's support. Yeah. And also, like, they're in a safe environment in your home. So, they can work through different ideas and have that stalwart support, like that keeps them going.
Right.
Yeah.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, thank you. It reminds me when my kids were, I don't know how old they were, like maybe 10 or 11 or something. And I was driving them somewhere in their back seat and they were railing against weed. Like, they were really, really anti-weed. And I was like, where did this come from? And I was, and so I was like, okay, so two things. Like, one, I'm very curious as to why you're so anti-marijuana. And two, before you answer, I want to let you know I'm not. So, like, if you're doing this just because you think, it's the right thing, like, they're like, no, well, we're anti-weed because it's illegal. And I was like, oh, wow, right. It was illegal.
What good kids.
It was illegal, right? And that makes sense. And it was definitely one of those parenting moments where I was like, okay, what do I do with this? And so I was like, yes, that's good if you should respect the law. And let's be clear, laws are made by people, and some of them make sense and some of them don't, and some of them change. And what I want you guys to know is, at some point, probably not in the too distant future, but definitely in your lifetime, weed won't be illegal anymore. It will be legal. I guarantee it. And so then you get to decide what you think about it. And the example I gave them, because they grew up in San Francisco, was like, hey, I was like, what do you guys think about same-sex marriage? And they're like, what? It's normal. It's fine. I'm like, when you were a kid, it was illegal. In fact, the first place it became not illegal was in San Francisco. I was like, so if it were illegal right now, would you be anti-gay marriage? And they were like, no. I'm like, that's all I care. Like, just have your own thoughts about it. Like, respect that there's a law, but also have your actual thoughts about it. And there's no reason you should have a thought about weed because you've never smoked and you're too young, right? It's not good, something you do for a while, but I'm just saying, it's like, those are like the parenting moments that you kind of go, wow. I mean, that you can miss those pretty easily if, like you were saying before, if you're not present, and how do you handle those? So there's so many, little things. Like, as another, I'd love to hear if you have parenting moments where you're just like, yeah, this happened, and like, I was a great dad in that moment, or like, I really fucking blew it in that moment. Like, what are some of those memories you have?
Yeah. Well, I will say, just to reiterate, like, your kids having an opinion means they're smart. Like, it doesn't have to be right or wrong, but like, if they can elegantly put out, this is my position at that, that's great. That's great. Now they're way off base. There's some realignment you can do, obviously, but yeah, I love that piece. A moment you asked, a moment where I was
like
took a step
particularly
back and I was like,
proud, or of a moment where you're like, I fucking nailed that one.
yeah, I'll tell you, the last couple of years, I've had a lot of those moments. So my daughter is getting to the age where, so she's a high level lacrosse player. She's getting recruited for colleges, and she got injured in March, and she tore her ACL and meniscus, and it was bad. It was real bad, about as bad as you can get. I mean, it's essentially you're going to be off the field for about a year, and her journey had been amazing up to that point. I'm not a wake up super early morning on the guy. She wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning. She goes to the gym. She's like, I have goals. And that right there is a huge one. If your kids have goals and you've helped them understand how to appropriately identify a goal and then set a strategy to get to that goal, that's a huge win. So many people don't look forward. They're looking at only that day. And I think that can stunt young people for sure, because they're always just looking at what's in front of them rather than, well, if I do this, this, and this, then these other things, they become an opportunity for me. And so just her setting her goals on her own was huge. But the injury ended up really transforming our life. We were getting ready to go into about 3 months later, a journey of, hey, we're going to be living on the East Coast for 45 days. We've got 28 different events that she's going to participate in. And it was going to be our lives into that period of time. And, she got injured. We really all started to mourn who we were as a family at that moment. And, she stayed as positive as she could, but this was the coolest moment. The coach, right after telling us that we were off the team and nothing was going to work out, you should cancel all your flights. One of the other coaches called back and said, you know what? Don't cancel anything yet. Just let it rest. Let's see where you go. Because I've seen girls come back from this and not have to get the surgery until after they get done with this recruiting summer. And in the moment, I knew in my soul, and she did too. JL did too. She's like, oh, okay, that'll be me. I'll go do that. And it was like the world came back to how it was. and she made it happen. 5 o'clock in the gym, doing what she needed to do. It was so impressive from just a fortitude standpoint that she was mentally strong enough to make it through that period of time. It was one of those moments as a dad where you go, okay, she's going to be good. Like she'll be fine. I'm not like hanging up. We're wrapped for parenting at this point, but it was one of those moments where you just go, okay, she's heard. She's heard the message, right? Yeah. And with my son as well, because much like me, he had some challenges through his grade school and high school ages, and he got out and he said, I want to work on classic cars and I want to be one of the best welders you could see. And this was a kid that was not going to college at all. A super smart kid, great at, the science, technology, English, or science, STEM. He was fantastic at it. It was in like the high level classes, and he did not relate well to school. COVID really did a number on him. But he determined, I want to be a high level welder. He's at Sierra College. He's about to be done with his program, I think, in the next quarter or two. And those are those moments where you're like, these kids are going to be all right, right?
Yeah.
They've got it. They've got it figured out.
Yeah. And so the whole car thing passed down from your grandfather to you, now to Kaden.
It actually, from my grandfather to my mom to me to Kaden. Yeah, my mom was big into cars too. A lot of my memories as a kid was either on 4-wheel drive trips in my grandpa's Jeep, time in the Rubicon doing 4-wheel drive, which is funny because I can't stand 4-wheel driving. It's dirty, it's hot. I'd rather go hiking. But she would also take us to car shows all the time, and I loved it. And she knew about the cars, and she had her favorites. And it's nostalgic. It's beautiful. I have a nostalgic bone in me that says I think the greatest era might have been during the 50s and 60s. Now, would I want to do a live then? No, absolutely not. I think we're living in the best time you could possibly have ever lived as a human. It has its other challenges, but from a vehicle standpoint, yeah, it's a pretty cool era.
How would you say how would you say being a dad's changed you? Like, what have you learned about yourself? What have you changed? What have you worked on? What's been the impact of being a dad?
Infinite. It's infinite amount of change. When I met Audra, I was a child, and I was a 26-year-old, so I was definitely not a child. But I look back at who I was then, and who my wife and the kids in this life have crafted me into, and it's drastically different. Mainly around patience. Um, Patience has been absolutely the biggest one. I had very little patience, which we talked about. It led to some frustrations with first having a baby in my life. If somebody could have come back to that age that I was at and helped me really understand what patience actually was and how to have some of that in how I react, it could have helped a lot of
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah.
But that's patience is a lot of times not a young man's game, and I think that's part of the challenge of having a kid when you're on the younger side. But also the other thing that having kids really helped me understand was, like, you should have a full plate. Like, and I want to say this in a specific way because I think this way in business now as well. I like to overcommit, and not to where I can't follow through on things, but to where I have a full plate. I want to be at the kids' events. I want to help them at the dinner table with work. I want to be at the dinner, like, having that great conversation. If there's too much downtime, or if there's too much time where they're just in their room playing video games, it's just wasted time. And young people, they need to be busy, because if they're not busy when they're young, they're not going to be busy when they're older. And
Mhm.
that's a problem, because it can create times where people are just like, yeah, this is normal. I'm going to sit and play video games for 16 hours. And you're like, that's not a successful day. So taking on more on my plate and showing them that you're able to do it. I look at Jay and Kaden. Kaden works full time, goes to school, is in a relationship, takes care of, so he lives on his own now, takes care of his house, goes to car meets. Like, he's got a pretty good consistent schedule. Likewise with Jay, it's like she's on student council, she's homecoming princess, she's on 3 different lacrosse teams across the United States. Like, I like that, like, because that's a busy, productive person, and I think it just gives your kids an opportunity to actually find what they're really interested in. I think that's probably the most, like, when you really break it down, it gave them the opportunity to go, oh, I really like this. I don't want to do that anymore.
So, what did you do to get over your impatience? Like, how did you shift that?
Audra and I, when we were married, we had jail, we moved into a different house. My career started to get busier. I became very impatient. I would show up at work at 5 in the morning. I'd leave somewhere around 6 at night. Really tough time. I'd come home and she would want to hear about my day. But then she'd want to talk about, like, the minutia of my work. And it was a really challenging time. And it was not a great time for me from a parenting perspective. Like, I was not ultimately effective. She was phenomenal. My wife's the consummate mom. Like, she's absolutely a savage at it, which covered my back a lot of the time. Like, it was a partnership game for us, for sure. Something that we put into place that really helped me, and it's interesting because other people have differing takes on this. When I would get home from work, I got to the point where I said, what would really help me to be present and be there and really get in the mindset that I can be the best at what I need to do, was when I come home, if I can go right to the gym and get a work out the stresses, the problems, the challenges, and not shift directly into it, that would be really helpful for me. And at first she was like, yeah, but I've been at home all day, and I need to shift here. And it was not easy, and it was a sacrifice. But I'll tell you, like, when she started to see the results from that, I was in. I got away from the work. I got into it. And we also made a rule that if it was one of those days, we're just not going to talk about work. And I'm going to live in the family. I don't want to relive my work day in front of the kids, especially the challenging ones. And by doing that, even just that small thing, like, and it's such a natural thing. Like, you get home from school, how was school today? Right? We want to go right to that because you want to hear about the day. But just putting that boundary in really, really helped me just be present and live in their world and make it our world rather than me coming in with all of my own drama and everything else that was attached to it through the day. I think that, and then also the loading the schedule, like, you've got to be effective in those period of times. And I'm really good at, got to be here, got to be this person at that event, or got to be here, got to coach, got to do this, got to do that. And that, the longer that I did it as a dad, it helped just me be more effective at going, I'm around the family. I'm with the kids. This is how I need to show up. I need to temper all these other things. I need to be present. I've got to be effective. Some of those were just like, they sound so small, but it was like, it freed me up emotionally to be there and to be the best that I could be at the time. That and physical exercise. You want to be more patient, maybe go lift some weights and go run around for a while. You'll be a whole lot more patient when you get done with that. You treat your kids like they're adults, but you can't expect them to respond like an adult. Like, they're kids. And no matter how effective they are at adult conversation, there's those breakdowns where you're like, oh, this is a kid.
Right.
Like, this is obviously a child I'm dealing with.
Right.
And that got better and easier with me, definitely over time. And yeah, I mean, gosh, patience is, if I could go back and teach myself some of those skills earlier, it would have been a game changer for sure.
Yeah. What were the things that you look back on and regret and wish you had done differently?
Yeah, probably just the frustration piece. Like blown up at you get in the truck to go to a baseball game, and Kaden, who was famous at forgetting one article of absolutely needed items in order to be prepared. There's other ways that I could have taught that, which I will say, it's interesting though. You look forward, and Caden's like, I never forget a tool before I go to a job site. He's like, I just want to thank you for that. And I was like, yeah, you could have learned an easier way. Those for sure. Those just like forgetting that they're a kid and they're going to do that, right? And giving a little bit of quarter. I had a hard time giving quarter, and that specifically, like forgetting things, it was like, oh, I would roast them for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because it's like, maybe as a parent, you're going to be the one who teaches them. Maybe they're just going to learn on their own, or, maybe the world's going to teach them. It's up to them to learn when they learn. But, creating the space for them to have those thoughts or insights or opportunities is definitely an important part.
Or failures. You got to create room for them to have failures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's true. Is there, because there's an instinct to want to protect your kids, but there's such value in the failure part. So how did you manage that?
When they were younger, like, kids are going to get hurt, right? Kaden specifically, like, he'd get on a skateboard barreling down the road face first, and I was like, that's going to end bad. It did a couple times, right? I remember it was like swollen face. I don't know that I did a great job at that. I think I did. Like, I feel like they're okay. And they're adventurous. And that's like, you have to be like, if my kids want to learn to go how to snowboard, great, let's go learn how to snowboard. Other parents are like, whoa, that's dangerous. And I'm like, no, they're going to put a helmet on.
Right.
You're going to give them elbow pads when they first start. You're going to make sure that they're protected. In those moments, like my kids got destroyed snowboarding, but they loved it. And that's the best part, is it's a trial and error. But what are some of the things that I did? And I don't know that I could even formulate it. Who knows? Give them like, hey, hold my beer, watch me go do this, right? Like, kind of lead by example at the same time. So, and I definitely had my fair share. Helping your kids get out of their comfort zone. Maybe your parents, like if I wanted to go do a triathlon and I wasn't even a runner, go do it. Like lead by example, like show your kids that you're actually out in the world getting after that too. I think that's super. We come, I talk about this all the time. If I remember back to when I was a kid, a 45-year-old looked really old,
right,
and didn't do much. And you look at now, and it really seems like the people when they're getting older, and I'm 46 now, feel like I'm just getting into my prime. And I think that's a really good example for younger people when their parents are executing out in the world too and have goals personally and professionally, are really getting after it.
Yeah. Man, I feel like we can talk forever on this, and this has been great. So, and you dropped a lot of wisdom so far. And just a final thought before we wrap up here is just thinking about a first-time dad, like brand new to fatherhood. What advice do you have for that person?
Be ready for your life. Like your life should change when you have kids, and it's totally okay.
Yeah,
like. That if your life doesn't change when you have kids, you might be a shitty parent. Like,
that's a good measure.
Right. It's like I was really ready at the age that I was at to have that transition. And I see a lot of parents that aren't ready to have that transition. And so it's like, if you're at the bar on a Wednesday night and you got a kid at home, that's just not a good look.
Right.
So I think that's my biggest guidance is just be ready for your life to change. And it's an exciting change. And just because you're at home with an infant doesn't mean that you're missing out on something. You're crafting a human being.
Right.
And when I look back, I think there were times where I was like, oh man, this is, especially in the first couple of years, it was amazing, beautiful babies, like hilarious, tons of fun. But there's a lot of time. I'll also say when you have a kid, take advantage of naps. You should definitely be napping.
Good one.
It's like the most glorious time of the day. But yeah, if you're moving into parenthood, like know that your life is going to change, and make it for the better, because it's up to you.
Yeah.
If you make it for the better or not. If you see it as an inconvenience, it will be an inconvenience, and you're going to act like that, and your kids are going to know. You cannot hide that.
Right.
And then just like my folks and my mom and my grandparents, like, be unwavering in your love and support for them. And that doesn't mean when they absolutely mess up and do something heinous that they don't immediately know that wasn't heinous and not acceptable. But that doesn't affect your love for them and your caring for them.
Yeah.
Like if your kids can understand that it's like they're going to mess up, and it's not going to affect how I feel about them, I think that's it's what is the biggest impact that I have from my mom and my grandparents, for sure.
That's awesome. That's great, Evan. Man, thank you so much. This was incredible.
Yeah.
I love you, brother, and I love hearing all about your fathering journey, and I just really appreciate you spending your time and sharing all those insights.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I hope it. If anybody took one thing from it, it was a positive takeaway. So I wish there was something like this when I was a younger man, and I wish I was at a point where I could hear it too. Right? I think. Yeah,
let's hope for that. Like for sure, let's hope people are interested in knowing it. Because I guess you're right. We all think we have it all worked out, but man, to be able to get some of those insights right in the beginning and not make all the mistakes and learn it the hard way. So this is great. Until next time, appreciate you.
Likewise, brother. Okay. Good to see you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Dad Manual Podcast. If you liked it, please leave us a rating or subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you really liked it, please share it with a dad you love. I'm looking to grow a community of fathers who are ready to change the world, and I need your help to do that. And if you got questions or topics you want me to explore, email them to me at thedadmanual@gmail.com. I would love to answer your questions on our next episode. Until next time, I'm Tony Cooper, and this is the Dad Manual Podcast.